right now.
Yeah, you on too, Baxter?
Yeah. Yeah, it's Monday. It's that time.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm hollering at Stenson and Henry right here.
Okay.
But they're on the phone talking some business, but they about to jump on.
Okay, good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
Good to see everybody. We're gonna get this thing started.
All right.
So
Let me go
last
on
week
mute.
we had Memorial Day last week, and we didn't communicate that the week before. So inside of that, I want to make it known that in the future I'll make sure that that's communicated a week ahead of time that we're not going to be on a call on a holiday. Okay.
Yeah, my bad as well, members. I do apologize.
Yeah. Good deal. All right. Let's go. The last time we were together on this call, we were talking about just tracking and recording and the tools that we use to do that. So today we're going to continue on that because really what we wanted to do is get into some QuickBooks talk. That's one of the tools that we use to track and record our financials. It's a financial recording and reporting and financial management tool, which is critical for any business. We want to be in the know financially about what the business is doing activity-wise. This allows us to make decisions if we know what we're looking at. Sometimes I get on the call with people and it's like Greek. People, like they don't understand what the numbers mean. They don't really see or know. And for me, I see it and I take it for granted that I see it. It's not a skill set that's often there, but it's a skill set that each and every one of us as business owners can develop, like the basics, the fundamentals. What is a profit and loss statement? What is a balance sheet? Those types of things, cash flow statements. What does it mean to have equity in your company? Like, what is the actual valuation of that company when it's operating? Am I doing good? Am I winning the games, or am I not winning these games? And how do I know? Well, you won't know these things unless you have a real good, clear way to track and record things inside of the business. And that is why we're here tonight, to really understand what that's going to look like for you. Okay. So let me actually bring it. I need to see everything I need to see here. Boom. Bear with me, guys. Make sure I can see everything I need to see. Make sure you guys can see. All right. Here we go. Guys can see that, navigating the territory, understanding business structure for your trucking company. Are we all looking at this right now? Can we all see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right, fantastic. I got caught up with the music before the call. I wasn't even really knowing what we were looking at anymore. All right, guys. So this is me, Cheston Bulgin with By the Books Consulting, senior consultant over here. We do accounting and QuickBooks, operations consulting. We look at business systems and let our clients know whether or not they're out of alignment with their systems and their workflows in their business. A lot of the times, I'm talking about this for a little bit too, because QuickBooks is really another structure, another system that we put in place in business. And a lot of times businesses will stagnate, struggle, and not do as well performance-wise because we don't have these systems in place. We're not really utilizing these things with a degree of integrity. And this is what we're always striving for, is to have a degree of integrity inside of the systems that we create in our business so that we can grow it with ease, systematically. Okay. So we take a look at those things for our companies, our clients that we work with, rather. And FYI, we're taking on new bookkeeping clients over here, new month-end close clients. We've opened the door for that, and we're doing 30% off for MPTA people. So if you're interested in that, make sure you put your email in the chat, and we'll connect with you and talk more about it. Okay. And what that looks like, you get to work closely with me on the financial side. We monitor your books pretty meticulously to see exactly where the money flow is going. And then you'll have insight as far as what decisions to make. Quick disclaimer before we get started. The following is for educational purposes only and is not to be considered financial accounting or legal advice. Please consult your tax, accounting, and/or legal professional for specific advice. And of course, this is always put out here. What would you like to know? Bringing relevant topics to this conversation, especially when it comes to, really creating clarity out of the chaos, moving from the confusion to clarity and understanding like what it is that you're looking for when it comes to this aspect of your business, like the accounting and compliance. There's a lot of stress and overwhelm too, like around compliance and tax stuff. These are conversations that we do have in these talks, but specifically, what do you want to hear? Like, I know you're going through things out there while you're running your business, and it might be confusing. You come across scenarios like, man, what do I do here? How do I manage tracking my fuel cards, fuel statements to know exactly what I'm spending every month? Seems like all my money is going out the window. I've got money coming in, but at the end of the day, it's like, where did it go? And I'm wondering how I can get some control over this thing. Sometimes it wants to be a specific conversation like that, like the day-to-day, boots to the pavement, tires to the road type conversation. Like, what do I do? So you could do that by sending an email to me or reaching out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Your Accounting Superhero. Again, you're going to gain at least one thing out of these conversations, each and every one of these conversations. That's my intention for this, is to make sure that you have that, at least one thing that can help you survive and thrive in trucking. Okay, you have a new level of clarity and some actions that you can take directly as a consequence of being here on the call that will make an impact on your business. All right, so we're going to breeze through this part. This is actually a review of what we talked about last time. The conversation today is going to be geared toward QuickBooks. Because we talked about this last time around, the tracking and recording of your business and some practical tools to record your financials. Now, a lot of us go out here and we just keep our receipts. Sometimes, not all the time. It's not like, there's a mastery in that either. Sometimes we just keep it inside of a folder or binder, and the binder gets stepped on or something. And then we're like, okay, I have all my records, but do I really? And sometimes we have our statements, like our fuel card statements, our bank statements, our credit card statements, which is super fantastic. And it's not really compiled in a way that gives us actionable information. Sometimes we know what we want to pay our people. We send out Cash App transactions, or pay people to withdraw cash out of an ATM and pay our people. And there's no real ironclad accounting for that throughout the operation of our business. And then we have people that really are doing a good job with this, that have the systems in place. Come back here. They have the systems in place, like a payroll service. They have an accounting software. They have somebody that's in the administrative team. They're handling, managing transactional details, make sure things are properly recorded. And then it comes to the point where we're looking at, the financials and seeing exactly what it is that we produced at the end of the day. And there may be a gap still. That could be the experience. And the gap is this really what I did in my business? Because something seems off. It doesn't seem realistic to me. Did we really do this? And how do I know? Any trade, any business that people do, there are certain tools that you want to wield and use very well in order to do that job. You take a plumber. The plumber has their tools. Mechanic has their tools. Carpenter and so on. They have their tools that they wield. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you want to understand the tools that you have at your disposal that you want to use very well. And QuickBooks is a technology, or similar, whatever technology. QuickBooks is what we're talking about today. But you want to have a financial tracking software, a technology, as a tool that you can wield very well. If it's wielded well, you carry this tool, you use it well in your business, it can be the difference maker between you actually just barely getting by and you like catapulting your business to new heights, and just not even thinking about survival. You're just always creating something new. And it's like, well, how can we just keep on building this thing to the sky? Because now you have a systematic approach to things. You can actually see with clarity where it is you want to go to work and just execute based on what you see. All right. But if we have this tool, we want to make sure we're using it in a way where it gives us the reality. All right. How do we know if this thing is actually telling us the truth or not? All right. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into setups to make sure you have this tool calibrated to make sure it's set up for your sure wins inside of this, so you can wield it right. Okay. So let's go. Let's actually go to some examples. Some examples. Bear with me, guys. I'm going to pull up live QuickBooks feed here, so we can go to this thing. Show of hands. How many of you are familiar with QuickBooks? You can raise your virtual hand. I actually use this thing on a regular basis. I want to see a show of hands, or better yet, just put a 1 in the chat. That'd be a more of an indication. If you are familiar with QuickBooks using this tool, put a 1 in the chat for me. Okay, good. 9. I didn't say put a 9 in the chat. Got 0 and 1. Follow directions, people. All right, good. So we got some users of QuickBooks today. Yeah. Tabitha, I know you use QuickBooks. And Perlene, good deal. Awesome. Henry, great. Fantastic. Good. So you're familiar with it. It can be robust and confusing. You can get lost in here. I'm just going to say it. You don't know what you're doing. You can be like, I really don't want to be in here because it just gives me this pain in my stomach just to be inside QuickBooks. That's what it could be. But if you can be with that pain for a little bit and just discover exactly how this tool can be utilized to help propel your business on a regular basis, well, there's going to be magic that happens when you can have clarity. Clarity gives you like specific results in life and in business. Okay. Now we're looking at just a sample company in QuickBooks. It's not a trucking company. This is just a sample company that we have here in QuickBooks to use to show how to navigate around this thing and what to do and what to track. Okay. And I want to go over some important things that you'll want to be aware of so that you can know, at least to a degree, whether or not what you have is the truth. And when I say the truth, I keep coming back to the truth rather, is because it's important. It's important so that, like, at the end of the day, you're doing everything that you do. You're working hard. You're putting out so much energy and effort. You want to know if you're actually getting the result that you want. And the only way you're going to know that is if this is reflecting the truth financially. Now, this is a financial result is what we're looking at. And, this tool of QuickBooks is designed to make sure that we have clarity in our finances from our business. Nothing else that you have is doing that, unless you have another financial accounting software that you're using. Okay. So let's go actually over here. All right. I want to jump around to some of the basics here inside of QuickBooks. First thing I want to do is I want to come here and understand the nature of like transactions. Transactions are the way that the money flows through your business. Every transaction is like a building block. It's a building block to that whole financial picture. At least like a piece in the puzzle of the financial picture. So if we don't capture all the transactions inside of what we're doing in a business, then that financial picture will be skewed. It won't be correct. It won't be the truth. And a lot of times this will happen, things fall through the cracks because we don't have things, all of our transactional sources connected to one place. QuickBooks allows you to connect all your transactional data into one place. So if I have a bank account, like a checking account, savings account for my business, if I have a business credit card, if I have business lines of credit, if I have business loans, if I have cash on hand that I use, all this information wants to be brought together into this one hub called QuickBooks. The thing that's great about this is that you can connect your bank accounts, you can connect other things that integrate into QuickBooks so that the workload is not that heavy. It's automated. And some of you know this because you're using QuickBooks. It's like we call this area here the bank feed. That's what we typically call this thing, the bank feed, where all your transactional data comes in for review and acceptance on the books. Okay. Now, inside this bank feed here, you'll realize that there are a bunch of transactions sitting here. And these transactions are not necessarily on record on your books. These are transactions that are sitting here for review to confirm that they belong on your books. Or if you put something on your books that has been cleared through your banking account that you can actually match. Very important place to be inside of QuickBooks because it is the gateway to making sure that you are in reality with your business. If you're operating, or you're just going out there and paying like cash and kind of winging it, we got some clients that talk about, yeah, we do things like the Wild Wild West. We just do what we got to do to pay people. And you can get by on a certain level with that, but then you're going to have problems of scale. Like you're going to have so many pain points inside of your operation if you try to grow, that you'll never be successful in your venture because you don't have this systematic standard operating approach to business. This is the major benefit of a QuickBooks. It gives you that systematic approach to business every single day. There's a workflow, there's a standard operating procedure. And when you tie everything into it, it just brings all of that chaos that was the case into so much clarity. All right. So banking feed. Key thing to know about this is that when you tie your bank accounts to this, you'll see that there's a couple of different accounts connected inside of this demo, this sample of company. So we have the checking account connected, we have the savings account connected, and we have a credit card connected. And there are some transactions that are sitting here based on that connectivity. Okay. And once again, when we come into this bank feed, we'll see transactions sitting here that are waiting to be reviewed, to be entered on the books. All right. And then as a result, as a consequence of them being entered on the books, we'll have that record and it will go into our financial reporting. Until that happens, none of that stuff is going to be reconciled inside of your bookkeeping processes. All right. And here too, you have other transactions like app transactions, which do not apply so much for what you're up to. This is more so for people who do e-commerce. But the tab that you will rely on a whole lot, I would hope that you would rely on, is this receipt tab. Because a lot of times you'll go through your day-to-day and you'll keep receipts, like people email you invoices and POs and bills, as you go about the day-to-day of the operation. And if you're out on the road, if you're owner operator, you're just taking these pieces of paper and compiling them somewhere, and it can be disorganized. This will allow you to organize all your receipts in one place. Not only that, once the receipt is read from the technology, it'll easily be converted into your transaction details. So it'll actually be on your books from the receipt activity. Okay. Bills from work orders that have been performed. For example, if you are set up with a particular vendor, sometimes you can get net 30 accounts with some vendors and they'll send you like a bill. You can add those here too, and the technology will read it as such. So it'll treat it as a bill in here. A few ways to get those receipts here. One, you can actually upload them directly from your computer and your Google Drive. This is really the same. If you have a Google Drive, you can upload from there too. Again, here too, you can set up an email forwarding. All right, so like you set up an email address to which The receipts can be forwarded. You can forward whatever receipts people send you via email to this one, and then they'll show up here. And then also, in addition to being able to forward emails and receipts, you can use the mobile app to snap your receipts. This is what I do, right? I go out and I spend money for my business, and I don't like paper. So right there at the counter, as soon as I get it, I'm snapping the receipt and tossing it in the trash. It's already a record. Now, when you do this, at the end of the day, like let's say a month goes by, you're doing all this, now all of your stuff just stays up to date. And there's a constant in the background working of a reality being created for how you're operating your business. Okay, now these other two tabs are not relevant to you, so we're not going to spend time here. Okay. This one here, actually, the expense claims. I mean, some of you guys, you have multiple drivers, and then you allow them to buy, let's say, they'll go to like a Love's or something, and they need to get oil for the truck, or need to get some type of maintenance materials for the truck, and then you want to have approved expenses. So here you can have expense claims, and these things can be submitted from their app too. All right. Actually, this one is actually for expenses, but there's an expense claim feature for QuickBooks Advanced. Okay, so I guess you won't see that here. But there's an expense claim feature that you'll have on QuickBooks that will allow you to submit expenses that are on the road. And people can actually snap these expenses, and you can approve them or disapprove them and say, okay, well, we'll reimburse that, we'll cover that, or no. Okay. All right. Now what I want to do is pull back a little bit. I want to talk about how to set this thing up, like this QuickBooks up, so that you have like ironclad financial tracking. The things that you want to know to set your QuickBooks up in the way where you're going to have all your transactional data aligned so that you know what's going on with your business. A couple of things with that. If I'm spending money, I want to know exactly how I'm spending it, and who I'm spending it with, and why I'm spending that money. Hopefully that makes sense, right? It's like if you're actually operating your business, you want to know every detail about the money that goes out of your company. For example, if I have a vendor which I'm using for maintenance costs, I'm actually using this vendor over and over again to repair my trucks or trailers. I got a mechanic, and all of a sudden I'm looking at this one mechanic versus another one that I'm using. I want to know over time how much I'm spending with that particular mechanic versus the other. And if I'm not really getting too much of a different, service, a level of value out of that, I want to be able to make a clear choice on which one to go with and keep more money in my pocket. I can only do that if I'm tracking all the vendors in my QuickBooks. A lot of times what will happen is we'll have transactions that come through here, and there's not a degree of integrity to make sure that these transactions go to the specific payees, the people that we're spending our money on. And we want to do this so that when it comes time at the end of the month or the end of the quarter, we can review these things and say, okay, I've been spending this amount of money on this particular expense, and I've been spending this money with this particular vendor and this particular vendor. Why am I spending so much more money with this vendor when I'm getting at least the same quality or better service with the other one? So in order to have that granularity in the tracking and recording, we want to have a system where we're adding our vendors. We want to have their contact details. We want to make sure that there's no duplication, which happens a lot. And when I say duplication, how many of you understand what I mean when I talk about duplication inside of a system like this? Can anybody answer that question for me? Let me see a hand raised. Duplication is probably one of the most common and critical errors inside of a financial tracking software that causes our financial perspective to be skewed. But if we don't even know what it is, then we're not going to be set up to win, is what I want to say. All right. So who actually knows what this is? Duplication. If you were to actually answer that question for me, you can type in the chat or you can raise your hand and answer the question. Who knows what a duplication is inside of a software like this? Got the Jeopardy music on here. Anybody know? All right. So for all you smart people in the room, duplication, all right, it happens when we have the same vendor or the same customer showing up more than once in our system. There's actually no difference between the two. It's the same one, but it shows up multiple times in our books. Now, duplication can happen with vendors. It can happen with client customers. It can happen with chart of accounts. It can happen with expenses, right? It can happen with income, right? And this happens a lot because the common business owner just doesn't know, how to go about tracking these things. So when things go through the books, it's like there's like a lack of, we call lack of integrity inside of that. And, another account will be created as a consequence of that, whether that's a vendor account, whether that's a customer account, whether that's an expense account, right? That happens a lot too. We're going to have, like, some people have office expenses, then office supplies expense, then executive office expense or something like that goes on in their books when it's really just one thing. There's not multiple categories for that, right? And then, for example, Loves, we spend money with Loves. Well, we got Loves and OKC. We got Loves in Louisiana, Slidell. You got Loves in Houston, Texas. So they got all these different Love vendors sitting here, and you're not really seeing the pattern there. And it's really just a one vendor. It is Loves, multiple locations, but it still is one vendor. Okay. You want to avoid this at all costs. All right. So that's important. We want to set up our vendors so that we know exactly where our money is going. We want to make sure that there's no duplicates. We also want to set up our 1099 people, so we understand how much we're paying these people from the start. We're tracking them throughout the year, yeah, but we want to understand, we want to have a running account of this tracking. So what will happen is if we don't have a correct accounting or an accurate accounting of our 1099 people, and we're just doing Cash App and we're not really tracking this thing, or if we have a different way outside of QuickBooks that we're using to pay our 1099 people, then you're actually going to be off with your books. You may be recording this as a contractor expense, but then the 1099s that you issue will not match up with that contractor expense, and it will raise red flags when you go to file your taxes. So at the end of the day, something's going to happen. Either you're going to owe the taxes for that money and not really be able to deduct that, right? Or you'll have it accurately reported to the people they belong to so that matches up, and they'll be responsible for their own taxes, if that makes sense. So it's very important to have your 1099 people listed here in QuickBooks. All right. Let's actually go here so you can get a visual. All right, so if we come here to our vendors, you'll be able to look at all the people all the businesses and all the individuals that you're paying money to, like payees is what we call these people, vendors. All right, there's a whole list of everybody that you've ever created a transaction for. As long as they have a name attached to them, as long as they have a business attached to that transaction, they'll keep a constant record of everybody that you spent money with, which is super fantastic. It'll give you so much in terms of analytical data. All right. We also have a section here where we can, the vendors and contractors are the same type of category. The difference between vendors and contractors is that we're actually tracking these contractors for 1099s. So if you go to a contractor list, it'll pull it up here you can see that the list is going to be a lot smaller because there's only a certain amount of people that you'll pay 1099 to, or a certain amount of vendors that you pay 1099 to. All right. When I go and look inside of somebody's account, I can see that there's something off when I know that they're paying people like a lot of you pay 1099 to your drivers. When I come here and I see that there is no 1099 accounting list, like here, there's only one, then it most likely something's off. Right? You're not really tracking things properly, and you're setting yourself up for a compliance risk. Okay. The other thing that you want to understand inside of vendors is that you want to be clear on the patterns of your spending. Once you establish the system of tracking all your transactions by the specific vendor or payee, then you can do something called like looking at reports. All right. You find out exactly what you've been spending. There's a reports in here in the report section of QuickBooks where you can come here and know exactly what you're spending per vendor. So you pull this report up and it says, well, where's most of my money going to? Right now, like right off the bat, you can see like this insurance cost is like the highest one so far. Pops right out, $2,200. Right, so I already know where most of my money is going, as far as what vendors are, as far as vendors go, rather. Okay, this is the thing, right? If you're not in here doing this, then you're most likely leaving money on the table. Why? Because I can come in here and see, okay, well, my insurance costs are the highest cost. Well, what's the next thing? You know, who else am I spending money with this year to that degree? What's the is this realistic? Do I need to spend this much money in insurance? If I have another insurance company in here spending more money on the same thing, then I may have made a mistake. It might be a duplication of the expense. Why am I overspending in insurance? And that happens a lot in the trucking industry. You go out and get a policy, and you dish out all this money up front for down payment on a policy, and you figure, though, this policy is not the one I'm going to continue with, and you go out and spend another one by spending more money on another policy. You've never really gotten the full benefit out of the policy that you had, right? You never get that money refunded, even though it's covering you for a certain period. Is a duplication of expenses in that area, something that's common. Okay, but if you're not looking at this stuff, you'll never know. Another thing about it, you saw I just went in here. You can go into any type of transactional history and see all the details, like when it was spent, what date it was spent, how much was spent on each transaction. I mean, we can drill down, is what we drill down to all the transactional details. The other thing that we want to start looking at when we set up our QuickBooks to Win is our customer details. Like, who are our customers? A lot of companies that I see, they don't track invoices inside of QuickBooks, which is set up for disaster. All right, so you want to start tracking all of your customer details and all of your invoices per customer in QuickBooks so that you can have an accounts receivable aging history. Not only that, you can see where your cash cows are. Like, without having an idea of it, you could be crystallized with that. Oh, this particular customer makes me this much money, so much more than everybody else. Why am I spending time with everybody else? Well, I could spend more time here because I'm getting this much more per load. Right now, how many of you guys are actually doing that with your finances and your business, looking at the details in this way? How much money is it that I'm spending with my vendors, particularly, each vendor in relation to the other vendors in that specific category? And then looking at your accounts receivable reports, all of your invoice history, and saying, well, which customers am I making the most money with? How many of us do that versus having just a general idea? Now, if you're actually doing that, you can put a 1 in the chat. If you're not doing that, you can put a 2 in the chat. When I say doing that, you're just looking at, okay, well, who's actually getting the most money from me as a vendor versus others? And then who is actually paying me more per load with invoices? Are you reviewing that on your books? All right, fantastic, Derek. It is. A follow-up question to that, Derek. How often are you doing that? If you want to type that in the chat as well. now. Good, every quarter. See, as long as we have a structure to doing that, then we can make choices. Now, the thing is, everything that we're doing here, we call them lagging indicators. So it's like after the fact. These things have already happened in history. They give me an opportunity to create leading indicators. So I can't tell a lot. See, I got you, right? The other thing that we have at our disposal, which is even more important than the lagging indicators, are leading indicators. What are leading indicators? These are the actions I take every single day. Now, if I wait, like if there's gaps in times between the moment that these things happen and the times that I look at them, there's more of a lag, right? So that's why they call a lagging indicator. These happen, there's a point in history now, and if I wait until the end of the quarter, there's that 90-day period that went by that I really didn't know anything. Whereas if I'm looking at my reports daily, well, I'm on top of it. It was only yesterday that it happened. Now I can adjust some things. I can say, well, this is a pattern of things that I don't want to have happen anymore. Right now, if a lot of the times you want to know the difference between what you want to look at daily versus what you want to look at monthly versus what you want to look at quarterly inside of your reporting. Okay. Now, everything has its purpose. Like we have weekly reports, we have monthly reports, we have quarterly reports, we have annual reports, right? And all those things serve a purpose to help us make leading indicator decisions. So leading indicator decisions means I'm going to adjust my actions now. Because I'm adjusting my actions, these are the indicators of my future. That's why we call leading indicators. They indicate like how my future is going to be. The activity that I put towards specific things based on what the history was that I understood it to be. That's what these reports give you access to. All right, so the next thing is like chart of accounts. Like chart of accounts are another thing. I know that we want to look at all of the things that we're doing, like Derek, you said quarterly, which is great. But how do we know if it's the truth? How do we know if these things are being reported accurately? There's a thing that we call the chart of accounts in QuickBooks. It is like the basic, foundation and like the register system that we use in order to track financial activity. Basically, you can think of a chart of account. It's like if you have like dresser drawers in your living room or in your bedroom rather. Every drawer has a place. Like you have a sock drawer, you have you have an underwear drawer, you have a drawer for your shirts, and pants and everything. So your chart of accounts is like that for your finances inside of your business. Like everything has a place inside of it. Now, we're going to bring this thing over here so you can see. It's going to share it real quick, guys. Talk about some things, a couple of things with chart of accounts, okay, that I want you to see. Okay, so right now we're here, chart of accounts. Now, if we have this organization is what we call it, is the organization of money flow. These are income, expenses, assets, liabilities, equity. Now, a lot of the times we don't understand financial literacy, and some of these are like foreign to us. Or you take a look at it and it makes perfect sense. Like money comes from somewhere, it goes somewhere. Where did it come from? Where did it go to? Chart of accounts allows us to distinguish those things. So if I have like income, so money came from a customer, that's where money came from. Income, and it went to, if you got cash for it, they paid you up front, and it went to your account, you went to your bank account, right? Which is an asset. So if you generated a sale and they did not pay you, they're supposed to pay you in 30 days. Well, it went to accounts receivable, which is another asset. When it came from sales, went to accounts receivable. Excuse me. If you generated income, but you had to pay off like some other expenses right away, like you had to pay your drivers. My money came from sales and it went to pay my drivers. It never showed up inside of any account in business. There was a micro transaction in there where you may have received some cash, but as soon as you received the cash, it went to your employee or your driver or whatever that is, whatever expense that was, maybe went to maintenance, right? And so money comes from some place, it goes to another place. And this is like what the chart of accounts allows us to see. Where is that money flow? What's happening? It's either going to be income, expense, asset, liability, or equity. So we all know income and expenses. Sometimes assets get confusing. Right. So if you don't understand like assets, liabilities, and equity, that's why there's an asterisk next to these specific things, because these are the common things that get confused inside of business ownership, inside of financial literacy. So assets or anything of value, they hold value. So what does that really mean? My bank account, it has a value in it. It has a certain dollar amount. That's value. Stocks, if I buy stock, it has certain value. That's an asset, right? It's also what we call more so current assets. Like they're more liquid. They can be converted to cash, which can be used in exchange for something else very quickly. I can spend it, right? That's what it means to be current or liquid. It's spendable. Okay, but there are less spendable things, like when you buy a truck, that's an asset. You buy a trailer, that's an asset. Another piece of equipment, that's an asset. Okay, these are things that have a value to them, right? What are liabilities? Liabilities are loans, borrowed money, or borrowed value, really. Right. So these are lines of credit. These are long-term and short-term loans. And equity is the amount of investment the owner has in the business. That is the amount of investment, or the amount of net worth is another term for that. The amount of worth that the owner has in the business. We can also use that in terms of valuation. And sometimes people value the companies based on this total equity, right? And you get that total equity because you have all of your assets minus whatever loans that you have against those assets, and that equals the equity you have in the business. Sometimes it's a matter of you just injecting your own money into the business to start from, or you get investor capital. Like there are a bunch of different owners in that, and that's also equity. Okay. But the point here is that your chart of accounts is going to fall into one of these categories. You want to make sure that these are set up inside of your QuickBooks so that the true story gets reflected. Right. This is what gets cast aside when we're looking at our finances. We look at the reports, and then we think that the reports are the law. But do you know if they're true? Do you understand how the money is flowing? I'll get on here's one of the things I'll do. All right, I'll get on a call with somebody brand new, and they've been handling their finances. They've been working with their books, or they've had a bookkeeper. And then I'll look at the balance sheet and I'll say, oh, something's off. Like 60 seconds. Oh, something's off. Well, how do you know? How do you know it's not the truth, Cheston? Oh, this doesn't make sense. This is this is that, this is this. Because the money flow, it has a certain distinct pattern, a certain distinct look to it that you want to understand. Once you get financial literacy under your belt, you'll be able to see these things like very quickly, so that you know whether or not your financial data is telling you the truth. And not only that, it'll give you what we call these key performance indicators in your finances to tell you, okay, this is the direction we're heading. It makes more sense to reinvest in this business than it makes sense to invest in something else, because my return here is a lot more. Well, how do you know? Because I'm looking at the truth, reliable data, and it's telling me that, like, flat out. I'm getting more of return here. And the other one, I'm only getting 10%. And this one, I'm getting 12. So I need to stick here. Black and white. You won't have these black and white choices if you're not set up to track it in a way where it reflects the truth. And that's what the purpose of this conversation is make sure that each and every one of us has access to the truth. QuickBooks is a tool that gives you access to the truth, so you can make these powerful decisions that help you move forward with your business with velocity, instead of feeling as though you're wasting time, or not having enough from your efforts, or wishing that you were doing something else rather than doing what you do. right? Because you don't see the end, and you don't see the end in mind. It's a struggle. But if you have this set up in reality, then you'll know without a shadow of a doubt. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. The last couple of things we want to talk about before we wrap up and have a Q&A. Payroll. Another thing that's available with software like QuickBooks is like you can pay your people in one place. All your financial transactions, all your financial activity can be in one place. You could pay, if you're an officer, you can have your compliance salary. Right? You can have your employees paid. If you have W-2 people, you can pay them through QuickBooks Payroll. You can also pay your contractors through QuickBooks. Right? There's also a free integration to pay your vendors and your contractors called Melio, in case you did not want to pay extra to pay people, right? Or have that service. If you're only using 1099 vendors, or if you're only using people that are non-employees. All right. And the other thing we want to talk about is reporting. We talked about profit and loss statements, balance sheets, accounts receivable, accounts payable, expense reports, transaction reports, man, for each account. So you can really drill down inside of a software like QuickBooks to see every single detail of what's going on with your money inside of your business. If you're not taking advantage of this, at least on a weekly basis, and saying, okay, well, let me sit down with this and see what we're doing. What are we really spending money on? Are these reports up to date? And a lot of the times you'll have somebody working with you on your books and they're not really doing the transactional work and the review work until like the end of the month. So there's a lag there. One of the main issues I've always had with business is that like really hiring people with these services is that nobody really cares about it like I do. When I say that, what I really mean is that if I want to be on top of my finances, I need to be on top of them daily. So if I have somebody I'm working with who's a bookkeeper and they're not really doing the transactions on a regular basis, meaning either daily or weekly, making sure that those transactions are organized inside of our accounting, then there's something dissatisfactory about that. Because you want to be able to know at any given moment and have at your fingertips the ability to make a decision. Why would you want to wait like 30 days later to realize that you're spending too much money on something when you can know this right now and make a choice to move with velocity? Why would you take another load with somebody when you can really understand that it's not worth your time? By looking at this information, you can change the game right now. Right? You can change the trajectory of how much money you get to keep because you've made a critical choice at this moment. Right? You can only have that available when you're staying on top of this stuff regularly. Okay. And the last couple of things we have, TMS integration is something that is available with your QuickBooks to help you record data. So TMS integration, your trucking management software. If none of you have that if some of you don't have a trucking management software, it's basically a software that allows you to run your fleet operations. It takes into account everything: your drivers, your equipment, your compliance, load planning, dispatching, all those things that you get done through your trucking management software. Great tool. And you want to have an accounting software that allows you to integrate with that TMS, because although a TMS is great, it does not bring all the financial data together in a way that's going to give you access to all of your financial decisions. All right, so you want to have that. And the last thing that you'll have with QuickBooks is budgeting. You'll have to have at least a QuickBooks Plus subscription to do that. But budgeting allows you to actually plan out things and say, okay, this is what I'm looking to create with revenue this quarter. Did we hit our target? Yes or no? Right? And you want to come up with historical patterns to make sense out of what your projections will be. And then you want to make sure that all your expenses are within a budget as well. Okay. Now, with that being said, I know we've talked a lot about financial stuff. I felt like I was going on and on and on for like forever here. Okay. And now I may be preaching to the choir. Maybe you all know this, but it's pretty quiet over there. Time to go to a Q&A. What questions do you have? What comments do you have tonight? Nothing? Everybody's good?
I see Tabitha's hand was raised, was it not?
I did not see that. Tabitha, did you have your hand raised?
No, ma'am.
I think we're
I didn't
good.
mean to.
So you guys crystal clear? Did you guys get any value out of this call?
A little bit.
Say a little bit. Yeah, a lot of
So
technical talk.
Cheston, do you just like QuickBooks other than other software? That's just your choice, or
It's my preference. It is my personal preference.
okay?
Because I'm very comfortable. There are a lot of other things that are good. Like Xero is good. Can use that. As you grow, like NetSuite is really a good called ERP. But QuickBooks is something that you'll be able to use for a very long time as you grow. There's so many financial capabilities in that, and it ties in a whole lot of administrative functions inside of QuickBooks as you grow, and you could scale it up with the different subscription levels. That'll be a long time before you need to move into something like an enterprise resource planning system, an ERP. But yeah, QuickBooks is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering because I know you speak of QuickBooks all the time.
Yes, I do. I'm a pro advisor with QuickBooks, so I know the software very well. Nearly all the clients I work with QuickBooks.
Okay.
But most all of them work with QuickBooks, and it makes sense to do that.
Okay.
Just because of what you're able to see, you're not able to get around to see everything with just any type of software. All right, so complete visibility on what's happening in the business is what QuickBooks makes it available financially with less time. I don't have to spend a whole lot of time there. Neither does any business owner. They can just go pull the report up, drill down into the transactional details, say, okay, what's going on here? What do we do? And they can really see whether or not there's something like off in the way that we're doing transactional processes. Just by drilling down into one particular category, you can see right away.
Is QuickBooks a good tool to use or software to use for someone who's never used or had a payroll service starting out?
Yeah, QuickBooks is good because, and this is another preference of mine, because I know the pricing of it is not too drastic in comparison to other things. And the other reason that it's good to use a QuickBooks payroll in and of itself, like let's say you're starting your business and you're not really using it for the accounting purposes, but you just need to have payroll on your administrative processes. It's good to use because eventually you want to get a software, and most likely you'll get QuickBooks, and you can integrate it really quickly and easily. It just ties into itself so well. Not that there's not other things that you can do, because there's there's Gusto and there's Paychecks and there's other things that will integrate with QuickBooks, but it's not QuickBooks, right? So it's not going to integrate as clean. Anybody else? All right, guys.
If I could just ask one question.
Yep.
As you probably know from looking at the books, we are in a state of crisis. So trucking in general is in a state of crisis. So as an accountant, what type of suggestions, so let's say that we are doing everything right and we're still having trouble making ends meet, what type of suggestions would you offer your clients in general to help us get through this rough period?
Yeah. When you say that too, I hear you. It's like we're doing everything that we can to make ends meet. And I get it. It's like times rough. Like you're not getting a whole lot of, revenue. For one, like the rates are down, and then number two, costs are still pretty high. Right. So we're dealing with that. And the thing is that, are we really looking at everything? This is why I'm having this conversation tonight, so that you have access to looking at everything. That's really what it's going to take. You have to be scrutinous. You got to scrutinize every single transaction that goes to your business and have a level of integrity there first and foremost. It really got to be on the cost side, manage your expenditure. At the same time, I know that it's rough out there as far as finding freight that's going to pay enough, right? But being in integrity on this side, like the outflow side, to make sure you're actually watching the numbers regularly and doing what you can to manage your outflow will help help and go a long way for you to weather the storm and get some freight that'll actually pay at a future date. You can actually focus on those actions to get, some pretty decent revenue coming in from other relationships. You guys are looking at, I know you guys had the contracts coming up with Cargill and everything, and those are some opportunities that come by. But are you going to be ready? Are you going to sustain? Are you going to be here when these opportunities present themselves? It's going to really take you being meticulous inside of this aspect of it, which is why we're having this conversation. All right, I want you guys to be pretty prudent inside of watching your finances, so you can make these choices. Say, okay, this is not something that I'm going to continue to do. I don't know how good you guys are with finding fuel cards. That's one of the best things, man, to find a fuel card that gives you a deep discount on fuel rates. That saves a lot, right? When other people are paying 70 cents more, you can survive, right? Well, those are going to be the things. You got to be really strategic inside of your supply chain, and understanding who you're paying and what you're paying helps you manage your supply chain. Okay. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Definitely. And
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. It's important to have clarity, not just in the hard times, but all the time, to have clarity. A lot of us don't. We think we're just in our head about stuff. We think things are a certain way, but we're not really looking at things out here in reality. That's the purpose of something like a QuickBooks, so that we're constantly looking at reality, bringing ourselves back to reality, and then creating decisions from reality. Anybody else? All right, guys. It's been great being with you tonight. We are taking on, like, speaking of reality, we are taking on more clients to open up the door to more clients so that we can actually keep eyes on the reality of their situation, make sure that things are tracked right. So if you are interested in having that be the case, you can reach out to me via email, cheston@buythebooksconsultants.com, or you can put your email here in the chat and I can reach out to you directly and we can have a conversation about it. All right, guys.
Hey, we appreciate it, man.
We see you Monday night.
See you Monday. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you.